Hey everyone, I just want to stop before the video and thank everyone for being here over the years. From the early days of just talking trash about places, those top 10 reasons not to move here, not to move there, those ones, to our retirement phases, to our real estate phases, and even those one-off videos like one of my favorites, defunct mall stores, which didn't do good, but I love that subject. But I just want to thank you guys and kind of put this positive video up for the holidays. This is some of my favorite positive retirement videos. It's over 2 hours long. It's a compilation, supercut. One other interesting thing about this is our first cut of all these videos. So we like to make the video and then we go over it to see what mistakes we have. We still miss some to this day. Some we leave in there on purpose. See how many you could find in this 2 hours of video. There's quite a few. Some of them you'll barely notice. Anyway, enjoy the video. Enjoy your holidays. Thanks for being here with us. Today, I'm going to tell you about 10 often overlooked places to retire. Everyone knows about retirement in Florida and Sun City, Arizona. Those are always in the conversations about the best places to retire. Most of the time, those places come into play because of weather. A majority of retirees have weather as their #1 requirement for spending their golden years. If weather isn't all that important to you, there are some really good options that are often overlooked. This video isn't just about the weather and retirement. It is about great places to retire that aren't the normal places people look to when they're thinking about retirement. We'll also be looking at the healthcare in these cities, the cost of living, and life expectancy. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Lynchburg, Virginia. Lynchburg, Virginia is a charming little city right between Richmond and Roanoke. Actually, it's not too far away from Farmville. Remember that game from Facebook years back? There's a real place called Farmville. But Lynchburg is right in the middle of the state, and it is home to a couple decent universities, Liberty University and the University of Lynchburg. It also has the James River flowing right by the northeast side of town. They got a couple really cool lakes in the area. One that I've been to is Smith Mountain Lake. Now, this was years ago. We had a good time there. It was a lot of fun. Of course, we were drinking and there was a whole bunch of college girls there, so it was a good time. And I was about that age too, as in the military. I don't hear no crap about, hey, Briggs, what are you doing hanging out with the college girls? You're like 50. This was years and years ago. Anyway, Lynchburg is a great city. Very historic, beautiful. I love the way it kind of has, there's trees everywhere. It's very forested, and as soon as you get outside of one of the neighborhoods, you're pretty much in the woods. You're not going to run into a whole bunch of traffic, and there's plenty of stuff to do here in retirement. It's not expensive either. Here's the stats. The cost of living in Lynchburg is 12% lower than the national average, and healthcare costs are 2% lower than the national average. That's pretty good. On top of that, the life expectancy in Virginia is 77.6 years. The lowest life expectancy is Mississippi with 71 years, and the highest is Hawaii with 80.7 years. So Virginia's doing pretty good with 77 years. The only negative to this one is it gets some pretty rough winters, so just keep that in mind. And they got a little crime. It's only 3% higher than the national average. And yes, it's horrible when it's above the national average. 3% is not much. Like I've said many times before, you got places like Detroit and St. Louis where it's 300 and 400% above the national average. Number 9, Prescott, Arizona. North of Phoenix in the hills, you have Prescott. And if you're not familiar with this place, it looks like it should be called Prescott, but it's not. And if you call it Prescott while you're in Prescott, they're going to climb all up your butt. And not in a good way. It's like how the locals know when someone's not from the area by the way you pronounce the town. This is a place that's big with retired cops. I kid you not. Prescott has been growing since the 1930s. The last time they had a census that was in the negative was 1920s, and since then they've only had 2 decades where they only gained single-digit percentage points. That was in 1940 and 1970. Every other year, it's like 20, 15, 45, 33%. In 1960, they had 90% growth. They've got a lot of new construction, I'd say within the last decade, and it's still growing. And most of it is retirees. So one of the negatives here, if you're a retiree that's going to want a job in retirement, something to do, there are not many of them. Spend your time hiking, golfing, and I don't know, trying to grow stuff in the desert. The winters here don't get terribly cold. It does get cold in the desert, but we're not talking Minnesota cold, you know? What you got to worry about here is the rain. They get some serious flooding, flash floods, all that good stuff. It'll scare you. But this is not a bad place to live, especially if you're someone that wants some heat. You're away from all that Sun City and Phoenix and Tucson. You're up here in the hills. It's a little less of a city lifestyle. Now, here's what's weird. Arizona overall has a lower than average healthcare cost. In Prescott, it's a little bit higher than Arizona's average, but it's still 6% lower than the national average. The life expectancy in Prescott is 76.3 years. Wear some sunblock if you're there. Number 8, Traverse City, Michigan. This is another one. I like to call it Traverse. I've also called it Traverse. The reason for that gets people to leave comments. Not saying I've never made a mistake, but come on, it's Michigan. Those people love to get their dander up over the stupidest crap. Traverse City is a great city, especially during the summer. It's Michigan. The winters are going to be rough, but this is a beautiful lake town. They only have a population of about 16,000 residents with about 153,000 in the entire metro area. So it's good size, but it's still not terribly crowded. It sits on the southern shore of both arms of the Traverse Bay, which is connected to Lake Michigan. And I mean, if those lakes don't float your boat, they got plenty other ones in the area. Now, this city is often overlooked because of its winters, and during the summers, it does get a little crowded with tourists and stuff like that, but it's a really, really nice city. If you live here and you need medical care, Munson Medical Center is the flagship hospital for the region. This is a good-sized facility with everything you're going to need, and it gets good grades in just about everything. The cost of living in Traverse City is 3% lower than the national average. Their healthcare costs are 5% lower, and life expectancy here is 76.7 years. It's much lower if you move there and continue calling it Traverse City. Number 7, Athens, Ohio. Settle down, settle down. There are nice places in Ohio to move to. Most of you have never heard of Athens, Ohio. I had never heard of it until probably 3 years ago. A subscriber asked me if I would find out some information on the city because they were thinking about moving there. Athens is nestled in the Appalachian foothills. It's got a nice little downtown too. Oddly enough, they don't have as many open storefronts, meaning vacant shops, as a lot of other Ohio towns do. This is also where you will find the Hocking River, which wraps almost all the way around town, and Ohio University. If you're looking for it on a map, it is southeast of Columbus. Again, here's the disclaimer. Ohio has horrible winters, just like any place else in this part of the country. Now, when I say horrible winters, I'm talking to people that are maybe from the desert states, California, things like that. I'm sure if you come down to Ohio from Maine, you're all, oh, this is kind of nice. One of the best things about Athens, Ohio is the cost of living. It's pretty low. So it's definitely a budget-friendly option for retirees. Here's the stats. The cost of living in Athens, Ohio is 9% lower than the national average. Their healthcare costs are 12% lower. And the average life expectancy here is 76.8 years. Number 6, Cheyenne, Wyoming. Again, cold but beautiful, and if you don't like people and you kind of want to be in a small town, which is at the same time a city, there are some places like that in this country that do that. They're a city, they've got, 20, 40, 60,000 people, but it really feels like a small town. Cheyenne is one of those. Cheyenne has 65,000 residents. That was in 2020. And I think they've dropped a little bit. They've had a touch of a slowdown after about 60 years of growth. Not much of one. In 2022, they lost 0.8% of their population. That's not terrible. If it continues 3 or 4 years like that, it's called a trend and people start looking into it. Even though they're shedding people, their real estate prices are still going up a little bit. Over the last year, they've almost grown 1%, while most of the country is dropping like 5 and 6%. If you're thinking about moving there, definitely talk to a realtor before you make any hard plans. But if you want to live that Western style life, Cheyenne's a good option. And of all the demographics moving there, it's retirees. Here's the numbers. The cost of living in Cheyenne is 2% lower than the national average. Not bad. Their healthcare is 8% lower than the national average, and their average life expectancy is 76.8 years. Number 5, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Coeur d'Alene has been very popular. Much like Prescott, a lot of retired cops are moving there. Coeur d'Alene is a lake town. It sits on Lake Coeur d'Alene. It's where the Spokane River empties into it. The city itself has a population of about 54,000 residents, and the entire metro area is only about 170,000. So it's really not that big of a place. I had thought people had kind of lost interest in it. I'd heard about it all the time. Everyone was moving to Coeur d'Alene back like 5-6 years ago. Then everyone quit talking about it. I looked at the statistics and no, they're still growing at a fast pace. If you want to retire in the Pacific Northwest, this is probably one of your best options. And yes, Idaho is part of the Pacific Northwest, even though it's not on the Pacific. Coeur d'Alene is a popular place to move, so there's a couple things here that surprise me. Number 1, its cost of living isn't terrible, and their real estate isn't terrible. Here's the stats. The cost of living in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho is 2% above the national average. Like I said, for a popular place, they're doing pretty good. We haven't been really talking about it much here, but their real estate prices, only 5% higher than the national average. That's not bad. That's probably going to change at the end of next quarter because they're still growing while the rest of the country is, most of the country, I should say, is still dropping in real estate price. I would say by the end of the year, they're going to end up being about 10% higher than the national average. Their healthcare is only 2% above the national average, and their life expectancy is 78.4 years. What really gets them on this list is life expectancy, tons of things to do, and it's a beautiful city. Number 4, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Sioux Falls is right where South Dakota, Minnesota, and Iowa meet. And it's a great place for retirees. Plenty of golf, affordable, great hospitals, friendly people, nice parks, great museums, and a bustling downtown area. I rarely use the word bustling, but I think it's appropriate here. Let's all say it together. Bustling. I don't know. I feel awkward saying that. Any words you feel awkward saying? Let me know in the comment section below. If you're going to move to the Dakotas, I would suggest South Dakota. They both get some pretty harsh winters, but North Dakota, a little extra harsh up there. I read a book one time about, just people moving west in the early days. I forget the term the guy used, but he said North Dakota gets so cold, only chubby people survive. It was something to that effect. I thought it was pretty funny. All right, here's the numbers. The cost of living in Sioux Falls, South Dakota is 11% lower than the national average. Not bad. Their healthcare is 4% lower, and the life expectancy here is 76.9 years on average. Number 3, Santa Fe, New Mexico. I've mentioned it before, but of all the desert-ish type states, if I was going to move to one, it would be Santa Fe, New Mexico. I like my rain, I like my trees, and I like wet soil, but there's just something about Santa Fe, New Mexico that's just amazing. I love that city. Santa Fe is a pretty good-sized city with a population of 87,000 residents, with the entire metro area having about 154,000. If you want to move to a city and not really have to worry about gardening, Santa Fe might be the place for you. Nobody has a lawn here. They have small trees and scrub brush. You have to trim those back every once in a while, but that's like once a year, once every other year if you're lazy, but definitely no mowing the yard. Here's the stats. The cost of living in Santa Fe, New Mexico is 3% higher than the national average. It's a nice place to live, so it's going to be a little more expensive than the average, but 3% is not bad. You get a little bit of a break on healthcare. That's 4% lower than the national average, and the life expectancy here is 74.5 years. Number 2, Columbia, Missouri. Yes, put your teeth back in your mouth. I said Columbia, Missouri. They have great healthcare here, and it is extremely affordable. This is great for retirees on a budget. And home prices are pretty affordable too. In second quarter 2023, the median home price in Columbia was $271,000. Now they are climbing, but they're still pretty low. The median home price in the United States is like $420,000 right now. I've seen different numbers, but it's somewhere between $420 and $450. If you're looking for Columbia on a map, it is right between Kansas City and St. Louis, with the Missouri River flowing west of town. I had dinner on an Amtrak train with a couple from Columbia. They spoke very highly of the town. They said it's got a little bit of crime, but they loved it. That was the same trip. It was weirdest thing. So we're crossing the Mississippi River, and for some reason the train got stuck on the bridge that goes across Mississippi River. So I'm in my little room on the train, and I look out the window, and right below me, a couple feet, there's a little shack that has, it's attached to the bridge bridge. I'm sure it has something to do with the operation of the bridge. Anyway, the door opens while I'm looking at it, and a little person comes out. Like, a little man. We lock eyes. He flips me off and goes back in the hut. Is that why he came out of the hut? To flip me off? If you've never had that happen to you, it's life-changing. I was really bummed that the train window doesn't go down because I had some really good jokes about living under a bridge for him, but yeah, I couldn't yell him. He wouldn't have heard me, and the people in the room next to me would have thought I was insane, yelling at a closed window. All right, let's get to the stats. The cost of living in Colombia, Missouri is 5% lower than the national average. Their healthcare, 2% lower, and their life expectancy, 75.2 years. All right, before we get to number 1, if you are interested in moving to any one of these cities or any city in the United States, there's a link for Home and Money in the description area below. They can get you in touch with a real estate professional almost anywhere in the United States. All right, on to number 1. And number 1. Iowa City, Iowa. Iowa City is a charming college town with a vibrant cultural scene. There's another word I never use, vibrant. It's a college town, so they got a good beer scene too. This town kind of has this mix of historic charm, outdoor recreation, and obviously educational opportunities. So if you're retiring and you want to go back and take some courses at the community college or the college, it's there for you. They have solid healthcare here with the University of Iowa hospitals, and then they got a bunch of clinics along with that. Not a bad place to live. Low crime rate, affordable, and a pretty good life expectancy. Here's the numbers. The cost of living in Iowa City, Iowa is 2% lower than the national average. Their healthcare is 9% lower. And their life expectancy is 77.5 years. But if you're looking to buy a home here, the median home price here is $280,000, and that's up 10% from last year. In today's video, we're going to take a look at what states are the cheapest states for retirement here in 2023 and what you might be missing out on or have to deal with if you're living that retirement on the cheap. Retirement might mean you've stopped working, but no matter what, you're not done paying. Retirement costs money. After I did a couple videos on retirement in the last few months, I started getting requests for videos about the cheapest states for retirement. We did a series of videos like this back in 2020, and I figured since so much has changed, we need to take another look. Today, we're looking at what states are considered the most affordable for retirees. As we've all learned in past videos, if it's cheap, it's going to come with some negatives. I'll point out the negatives and what you might want to know or be aware of before you move to these states. Now, one thing I'm not going to do is bog the video down with a whole bunch of numbers and stuff like that. All these states get on this list because they have tax breaks and exemptions and a low cost of living. When you look at the taxes and exemptions, those numbers change all the time, but normally they stay there in one form or another. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Mississippi. That's right, the Magnolia State starts off our list at number 10. As we all know, Mississippi is dirt cheap. Their cost of living is so low, it's embarrassing. They're like the 99-cent store of states, with humidity and mosquitoes. Rent and home prices are normally well below the national average in just about every corner of the state. They also have an exemption for pension income and reasonable weather. Their winters don't get terribly cold. Their summers can get hot and humid. It's just like Florida with fewer beaches and fewer teeth. Now, there are some problems with living in Mississippi. First of all, you don't want to live in Jackson. Jackson is the state capital, and it is by far the worst state capital in the Union. On top of that, WH ranks them as the 48th worst when it comes to senior health care. So that means there's only 2 other states that have worse health care than Mississippi. Number 9, Florida. We all know all retirees want to head to Florida at some point. Beaches, sunshine, things to do, coax your grandkids back east for a trip to Disney World. Things you always got to remember about living in Florida: they do get hurricanes and mullets. Mullets are not required for men in Florida, but they are encouraged. Florida has no state income tax, so whatever you got coming in, don't worry about it getting taxed, at least from the state. Florida ranks 9th for retirees in affordability, but they're actually 15th for everyone else, which for a major state, that's pretty good. I mean, they've got major metro areas: Jacksonville, Orlando, Tampa, Miami, and Mobile. One of the downsides is you got to worry about hurricanes. and their healthcare isn't the greatest. They're actually ranked 28th for seniors. And by the way, Mobile is in Alabama, not Florida. Don't delete your message, leave it there, let me see it. Number 8, Arkansas. Arkansas is not a state most people would move to. Said it many times before, the northwest corner of that state is a lot different from the rest of the state. The rest of the state is backwards as f***. And when I say backwards, I mean backwards. In 1879, in Menlo Park, New Jersey, Edison built the first high-resistant incandescent electric light bulb. At the same time, Arkansas was excited about this new thing they had called the wheel, and they were just getting used to fire. But it is affordable to this day. Not as affordable as Mississippi, let's just say they're the Walmart of states. Arkansas does give a credit for portions of pensions. Housing through most of the state is very affordable, normally about 20 to 30% below the national average. But the problem is a lot of the areas in this state have a lot of crime. Two prime examples are Little Rock and Pine Bluff. They always show up on the most dangerous lists. On top of that, they don't have the best healthcare. They're actually ranked 44th in the nation. But it's cheap, it's beautiful, and the winters aren't terrible. When I say terrible, they're not like Minnesota, North Dakota weather. They're, get cold, but not terrible. Number 7, the Peach State, Georgia. Georgia is a great place to live. Every handful of years, it seems like Georgia becomes one of the hot spots to move to. And why not? Georgia's a pretty cool state. Affordability is just one thing that makes Georgia a great place to retire. They got decent weather, beautiful beaches, amazing cities like Savannah and Atlanta, and good people. My only problem with Georgia is that humidity in the summer. Oh my God. I've had to deal with that a few times in my life and I wasn't really into it. Another bright spot for Georgia is they don't tax Social Security. Myself, I don't think anyone should tax your Social Security, but they do in a lot of different states. Georgia ain't one of them. Probably the biggest bummer about being a retiree in Georgia is the healthcare. For seniors, they're ranked 42nd in the nation. Number 6, Delaware. Now, Delaware's a little strange because it doesn't have an incredibly low cost of living. It's probably one of the higher ones on this list, but they do have a bunch of tax breaks and credits for seniors and retirees. It is considered one of the most tax-friendly states. It has no sales tax, no state inheritance tax, no tax on Social Security income, and an exclusion for part of retirement income. Basically, there's an opportunity to save a lot of money being retired in Delaware. You probably want to have a good tax man though, or at least a competent one. Sure, Delaware's up there on the East Coast. It's going to get cold in this area during the winter, so you always have to consider that. It's not as pleasant as some of the southern states, but their healthcare is not terrible. It's actually ranked 18th for seniors. Number 5, Wyoming. Wyoming is becoming more and more popular with the retirees, especially the type that like to be outdoors. Wyoming is wide open with plenty of things to do. They have a few problems. They don't have a bunch of surface water, so you always got to worry about drought, but they're pretty cheap. Not Mississippi, West Virginia cheap, but they're cheap. Better than Colorado, California, Washington, and maybe Idaho. So they're fairly cheap and they have no state income tax. That means your Social Security, all that good stuff is free from state taxes. The negatives are the weather can get a little crazy and a little cold, and their healthcare ranks 38th in the nation. Number 4, South Carolina. South Carolina is becoming more and more popular with the retirees. I've mentioned this before, but a lot of them go to Florida and they don't like it, and then they move back towards like New York a little bit, and then they kind of get to South Carolina and realize they like it there a little bit better. They call them halfbacks, meaning they went halfway home. And yes, South Carolina is not halfway between Florida and New York City. We get it. Don't need any more emails about that. It's just a phrase. Now, South Carolina has a pretty low cost of living. Sure, if you get in Charleston area or Hilton Head, maybe even Myrtle Beach, it gets a little pricey. But most of this state is affordable, both in housing and everyday cost of living stuff. When it comes to taxes, they do pretty good here. Now, it's not just tax-free like a lot of other states, but they have a lot of exemptions and they provide credits for portions of pensions and retirements. South Carolina is a pretty good state. Closer you can get to the ocean, obviously it's going to get better, but it's a pretty nice state. The bummer is they do get hurricanes, and their healthcare is ranked 39th in the nation for seniors. Number 3, West Virginia. West Virginia could get on this list on price alone. They are right up there with Mississippi when it comes to cost of living. They got a whole truckload of issues they're working on, but there's a few things you can't deny about West Virginia. Cheap housing, a low cost of living, and natural beauty that puts the state up there, I would say, in the top 5 in the country. If you like fishing, hiking, anything like that, West Virginia is a solid choice for any retiree, for anyone really. They have a ton of senior care facilities too. If you are a retiree, they have one of the highest rates of people over the age of 65 in the country. It's 21%. That's the 3rd highest in the nation. So there's a couple different studies that rank healthcare, and West Virginia is the only one that was really different on both of the studies I looked at. One ranks them 18th in the nation, and the other one ranks them as 49th. So I don't know who to believe at this point. Give you an example, some of the other ones. Mississippi on one had Mississippi at 48, but on another one had them at 46. So fairly close. One had Florida at 28, one had Florida at 31. Again, fairly close. This one's way off, so I'm really not sure which one to go by, but they're ranked 49th. They get some pretty bad winter, so keep that in mind. Spring and summer is beautiful in West Virginia. I mean, obviously winter has its own type of beauty, but to get out and do things, spring and summer are amazing here. The good news is they're the 3rd most affordable state. Now, there's a little side note to West Virginia. If you have a really good paying retirement or pension, West Virginia might not be the best option because after $60,000 per individual, they start taxing you pretty good on your retirement. So keep that in mind. But the cost of living here is amazingly low, and so is housing, so they get on the list. Number 2, Tennessee. Yes, the great state of Tennessee, the volunteer state. They've become more and more popular in the last few years. I mean, they always kind of have been, but they've been picking up steam. Used to be only people went to rural towns and Nashville. Chattanooga and Knoxville are starting to get popular, so that's a plus. People that don't make good decisions move to Memphis. Tennessee has something for everyone, even poor decision makers. Even though it's popular, Tennessee is still relatively affordable. Sure, it's no Mississippi or West Virginia, but it's also no California, New York, or Oregon. They have all kinds of different credits and taxes, but they also have no state income tax in Tennessee. Yeah, they're one of those states. Now, when you look at all the different programs they have for seniors and retirees, Tennessee is one of the top 10 every single time we look at that. So it's a great place to retire and grow old. Sadly, they do have Memphis, which has a ton of crime like I've been talking about. They can get some pretty bad winter weather. Still, not as bad as like North Dakota, Minnesota, stuff like that. It can get cold. Their summers, spring, and autumn are amazing. You just got worried about the quality of healthcare they got there. They're actually ranked 45th. Saw another study where they're ranked 40th. All right, before we get to number 1, if you're thinking about relocating to another state, we have a link down below for Home and Money. That's a website that has all kinds of tools for you if you're thinking about relocating and buying a house, like getting you in touch with a real estate agent, mortgage calculator, things like that. All right, on to number 1. And number 1. Alabama. Yep, Alabama, another southern state, is our number 1 state for cheap retirement. Their cost of living and their housing is just a little more expensive than West Virginia, Mississippi, but they have a lot more exemptions and tax breaks for retirees. So in the end, they're cheaper than both of them, which I know is hard to believe. Alabama, in most cases, is a better state. They got a lot of friendly people there that love to have a party, especially if some college football's on. The downside is it gets pretty hot during the summer, and their healthcare is ranked 41st in the nation. Not good. Today we're talking about retirees who have decided to pack up and move to a new state in pursuit of that perfect retirement. Whether it's a change of scenery, a more affordable cost of living, the opportunity to be closer to loved ones, or one of the countless other reasons retirees choose to put their home state in the rearview mirror. Millions of Americans retire every single year, and depending on what study you look at, the rate that do that in another state sits somewhere around 12 to 16%. Different studies take different things into consideration, but that's the national average. In today's video, we're looking at the states that had the 10 highest percentage of retirees that actually did that. I think what's amazing about this is everyone just assumes when people retire they head to Florida or Arizona. That's not the case. I'm going to show you what percentage left and the 2 states that that they most often move to. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Massachusetts. If you've ever visited or lived in the Bay State, you probably think they should be higher on this list on cost of living alone. This place is brutal on the bank account. Boston especially. You could be a junior associate at a law firm and still have to sell pictures of your feet to pay rent. 12.7% of Massachusetts retirees decided to leave the state. Where are they going? Florida and South Carolina. Pennsylvania as a destination was almost equal to South Carolina. Number 9, Nevada. I always thought Nevada was one of those places you retire to, especially if you like playing high-stakes bingo. They have that in Vegas, at least they did years ago. I saw a sign for it, high-stakes bingo. Those words just don't go together, high stakes and bingo, but I guess they have it. Could you imagine if you were addicted to high-stakes bingo and how humiliating it would be if you ran afoul and got in debt with the wrong people over your high-stakes bingo addiction? They send some guys over to your condo to rough you up. They pull the TV guide out of your hand, hit you over the head with it, then stomp on your reading glasses. The weather isn't really a factor as much in Nevada as it is in a lot of other states because if you're not older, you don't understand this. Cold weather is not an old person's friend. I'm over 50 and I have a lot of injuries from the military. And I'll tell you what, they hurt more in cold weather. And it just gets worse with age. I used to wake up every morning, get a cup of coffee and read what was happening in sports or whatever, just cruise the internet. These days I get my coffee and I sit on the floor in my office on this yoga mat I have and try and stretch out for 20 minutes just so I can have a normal day. But 14.2% of Nevada's retirees leave Nevada. They don't go too far. For the most part, Arizona and Texas. Number 8, Iowa. This one kind of surprises me because Iowa's a pretty cheap place to live. Their cost of living compared to most other states is pretty low. And that's normally the biggest driver for someone to leave their state as they want a lower cost of living. I guess Iowa's so boring, no price is going to keep someone there. For a lot of people, Iowa was probably a great place to raise a family and build a career. But as people that have been there for a very long time get closer to that retirement age, they start looking for a little excitement, a little adventure, something Iowa has very little of. I mean, unless you're into gardening and fishing, by all means, stay in Iowa. 14.7% of Iowa's retirees are leaving Iowa. Where are they going? Florida and North Carolina. Oddly enough, that's North Carolina's only appearance on this list. Number 7, New Jersey. This one surprises me in a lot of different ways. Number 1, why aren't they closer to 90% of the retirees leaving the state? Number 2, is this state's had so many super fun sites over the years, I'm surprised many people make it to retirement. There's been so many toxic waste dumps and contaminated water situations in New Jersey. I'm surprised New Jersey doesn't have a bunch of people that have a third and fourth eye on the back of their head or something. 15% of New Jersey's retirees jump the border into Pennsylvania and head down to South Carolina. Number 6, West Virginia. Yes, people leave West Virginia that aren't looking for a job. That's the biggest thing for people that leave West Virginia. They're looking for work. It's so affordable and it's a beautiful state. It's got a bunch of problems and I get it. It's a beautiful state, low cost of living. You'd think retirees would stay there because a lot of times when you're on a fixed income in retirement, you're looking for as cheap as you can get. It's hard to get much cheaper than West Virginia. But I guess that cold weather scares them out. It gets pretty cold there. 15.3% of West Virginia's retirees spend their retirement in some other state. The 2 top states for that are South Carolina and Tennessee. Number 5, Maine. Now this one's kind of strange. In the last handful of years, Maine's become kind of popular with retirees from other states moving to Maine. But the ones from Maine, they're not sticking around as much as you'd think. And a lot of that has to do with cold and the cost of living. Cost of living's not crazy downtown San Francisco or Boston expensive, but it's up there a little bit. The cold weather, I think, is what really chases a lot of retirees out of Maine, though. 15.6% of Maine's retirees retire in another state. The 2 top states for that would be Florida and Tennessee. Tennessee's showing up on this quite often. I'm a little surprised. Number 4, Virginia. Yes, the other Virginia, the original Virginia. As a guy once told me, the only Virginia that matters. A lot of the people that leave the state of Virginia in retirement are coming from the northeast section right across from D.C., where all those government employees live. Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax, Manassas. Those places are pretty expensive. And once you've worked for the government long enough, you probably want to get as far away from it as you can in retirement. And then spend the next 20 or 30 years trying to forget you ever worked for the United States government. But yeah, it's going to be the cost. And Virginia does get some bad winters. Not Minnesota or Detroit bad, but it gets pretty cold. 16% of Virginia's retirees retire in another state. And where are they going? Florida and Arizona. I guess that cold weather is really getting to them there. You're heading out to Arizona. Number 3, Utah. I would have thought Utah is one of those states you retire to, but it really doesn't seem like it. I mean, I kind of always had St. George, Utah on my list, my top 10 list of places I would retire. St. George is not bad. Great place to retire. Not too far from the Nevada border, so you can hit the casinos there. They're not the best casinos near there, but they're still casinos. So decent weather and casinos, and people are still flooding out of St. George like they're bringing back mandatory prairie bonnets. 19% of Utah's retirees choose another state. The 2 main states they choose, Arizona and Texas. So they don't go too far away. Number 2, Maryland. If you knew much about parts of Maryland, like Baltimore, you'd understand why people flood out of there. Baltimore, I read things and I see things and the crime is just horrible, and I get it and I understand. But a lot of tech companies have been moving there over the last 5 or 6 years. I thought they'd have a little tech boom by now. I still think it's coming in the future, but I think Baltimore is going to be a different city 10 years from now that, totally different from the Baltimore we know right now. But it doesn't matter what's going on in Baltimore or the rest of that state. Almost a quarter of their retirees are leaving the state. 21.7% of Maryland's retirees choose a different state. Their 2 main states they choose, Florida and Tennessee. Like I said, Tennessee is showing up here a lot, more than I would have expected. All right, before we get to number 1, I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel if you already haven't. We're almost at 1 million, and I'd really like to make that happen before the summer. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Delaware. There are some nice parts of Delaware. The only place that really gets any of the news or attention is going to be Wilmington, and Wilmington ain't great. I've heard Wilmington, Delaware referred to as Detroit South. How bad does that suck? Every time I do anything on Wilmington, I think of this guy that just used to email me all the time and threaten me and tell me not to come to Wilmington. I haven't heard from him in about a year, and I started wondering, does he do this with other people and did someone finally call him on it and show up? Like that old saying, F around and find out? Maybe he found out. Delaware does have a pretty high cost of living, and they do get some pretty brutal winters. I like their summers. Their summers are nice. But yeah, their winters can get pretty cold. The occasional snowstorm, blizzard, whatever, but they just have months where it's like bone-chilling cold. That wind coming off the water sometimes just, oh my God. But 22.5% of Delaware's retirees do it out of state. Where are they going? Pennsylvania and Tennessee. That just cracks me up about Tennessee. I would have never really thought about retiring to Tennessee. There's probably 30 other states before Tennessee I would retire to. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a great day, and be nice to each other. Today we're looking at the most popular states where people relocate to for retirement. Last week we created the best video ever uploaded to YouTube. Okay, it wasn't the best, but I liked it. Anyway, that video was about which states retirees left the most when they stopped working for the man. And today we're looking at where over 80% of retirees are moving to. That's right, over 80% of retirees that relocate move to one of these 10 states. Retirees change states for a bunch of reasons. Change of scenery, more affordable cost of living, the opportunity to be closer to loved ones. Millions of Americans retire every single year. Most stay in their home state. This video is about the ones that don't. The stats for this video are based on the US Census Community Survey. If you're one of those people that has decided to move to a new state and need a real estate agent, there's a link for Home and Money below. They can help you find an agent just about any place in the country. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Louisiana. You know, Louisiana has a bunch of problems. Being expensive ain't one of them. If you're a retiree and you want some warm summers and the winters aren't horribly cold, this is a good option. It's also kind of like for those people that wanted to move to Florida and maybe Florida's a little too expensive, They have similar weather. They also both get hurricanes, and that can be pretty freaking scary. But if you want decent weather and you like to fish, Louisiana is a good option. My suggestion, if you are one of these people, move to one of the rural communities. Baton Rouge, Shreveport, and New Orleans, they got some pretty high crime. I mean, they're beautiful cities, they just got some crime. 3.5% of state-switching retirees find themselves in Louisiana. Number 9, Maine. Maine is a great place for retirees that don't mind bone-chilling cold in the winter. The summers and springs are amazing in Maine. It's beautiful, things to do. If you want to get outdoors, it's there for you. If you want to garden, if you want to fish, if you want to hike, if you want to camp, if you want to hunt things, Maine is your place. It's also really great if you like wine and craft beer. And of course, being a New England state, it's got great seafood. I've brought this up before. Food doesn't really make someone move. I had a long conversation with a guy after a video. He reached out to me and said he actually moved because of food. I was like, really? And he's all, yeah, barbecue. He found a place. He was looking to retire, and he wanted a place that was cheap and had great barbecue places because that's his thing. And he moved there. He now lives just outside of Kansas City, Missouri. But if you like all those things, including great seafood, Maine is a great option. It is a little more expensive than some of the other ones on this list, but if you could swing it, it's not a bad place to retire. 5.1% of state-switching retirees find themselves in Maine. Number 8, the Walnut State, Georgia. We got a lot of southern states in this list, so be ready and stop typing. It's not the Walnut State, it's actually the Peach State. How many of you left that comment? Be honest, put it down there in the comment section. How many of you actually paused the video to give me some grief over calling it the Walnut State? But Georgia, like Louisiana, is a great place to retire if maybe Florida is a little too expensive for you. Florida does have some very affordable places, but overall it's a little more expensive than Georgia and Louisiana. And you kind of get the same weather and the same kind of lifestyle in Georgia that you'd get in most of Florida. You still got great coastal towns like Savannah. My opinion, I think Georgia's one of the better southern states. I like South Carolina too. 6.3% of state-switching retirees end up in Georgia. Number 7, Arkansas. Arkansas, in the last couple of years, has been showing up more and more on positive lists. And here they are again, number 7. A lot of people like Arkansas. A lot of people don't like Arkansas. While I was researching this, I saw a lot of complaints about the new governor. I don't know who it is. I guess she used to be a press secretary. All right, now she's the governor. Arkansas has some pretty scary places you don't want to live, but a majority of the state is decent. I mean, stay out of Little Rock, stay out of Pine Bluff and a few other places, and you're fine. The rest of the state is great, especially if you like the outdoors. I think Arkansas is often overlooked for being a great state for outdoor enthusiasts. Doesn't matter if it's hunting, fishing, camping, boating, whatever you want to do outdoors, Arkansas is one of the better states for it. I mean, places like New England, Colorado, even Oregon and Washington get more attention than Arkansas does. But Arkansas has some legit areas that are just beautiful. And people are moving there. Mostly they're moving to the northwest corner of the state. A lot of small towns in Arkansas are seeing a lot of retirees, especially up in the Ozark area. 6.5% of state-switching retirees find themselves in Arkansas. Number 6, Kansas. This is a state, if you want a nice, quiet, relaxing life with not a lot of excitement, Kansas is a good option. Kansas is also a state where a lot of people that are living the RV lifestyle, they choose that as their home base. Like they'll buy a house there and, 6 months of the year they travel around the country. It's centrally located, it's affordable, low crime in almost every corner of that state, and they're friendly. So if you do leave for 3, 4, 6 months, whatever, your neighbor, I'm sure, will check on your property for you. They're that type of people. But the affordability and centrally located is a big part of why people move to Kansas and retire there. 7% of state-switching retirees find themselves in Kansas. Number 5, South Carolina. Surprise, surprise, another southern state. Now this one's kind of strange because the majority of the retirees that are moving to South Carolina are just going to the coastal towns. Bluffton, Charleston, and Myrtle Beach. Myrtle Beach isn't as nice as most people think it is. I mean, it's decent, but I've been there a few times. I wasn't impressed. You always hear about Myrtle Beach, but it was nothing really exciting. It seemed kind of run down as soon as you get like 2 blocks in from the ocean. But a lot of retirees are finding themselves in the coastal communities of South Carolina. One of them is Myrtle Beach. Colombia also sees a lot of retirees, and a lot of retirees find themselves there because they've left the military. If you don't know, when you're in the military and you retire, you have access to like the military hospitals, and you can go on post, buy all your groceries and stuff like that, even though you're retired. So a lot of retirees will retire to an area around a major military post or just any military post. South Carolina has more than a few. 8.4% of state switching retirees end up in South Carolina. Number 4, North Carolina. Right next door, we got North Carolina. Being right next door, they obviously share a lot of the same positives that South Carolina has. They too have a lot of military bases. They're affordable, and they got some nice coastal communities, so retirees like to flock to those areas. Retirees to North Carolina also find themselves out near Wilmington, which is a coastal city, Jacksonville, which, yes, North Carolina has a Jacksonville as well, and Rocky Mount. Raleigh, if they have medical conditions, honestly, the Raleigh-Durham metro area has some of the best hospitals in the country. Definitely a great place if you have some kind of medical issues. 10.3% of state switching retirees find themselves in North Carolina. Number 3, Pennsylvania. This one, I got to admit, really shocked me. Pennsylvania, even though it's not part of New England, shares a lot of the same things New England has. Same weather for the most part, same landscapes, same outdoor lifestyle, but it's more affordable. Far more affordable than just about anywhere in New England. And I think that's a big attraction for a lot of people, let's say that, are retiring from Massachusetts or something like that. You can go to Pennsylvania. You're not terribly far to get back to Massachusetts, see family, friends, whatever, but you're living a lot cheaper in a place that you're almost familiar with. As always, I'll tell you, I think one of the best small towns in the United States is Honesdale, Pennsylvania. That's a great place to retire. They got a giant hospital in the small town. The hospital's really for the whole county, but it's a big hospital and it's right there in this little small town. So if you're retiring and you need a hospital nearby, this is a great option. One thing I find strange about Pennsylvania, most people don't know that they are very much into their outdoor things, especially fishing and hunting. I don't think people really associate, if you're from the area, obviously you know all about it, but if you're on the West Coast or even in the South, you probably don't associate Pennsylvania with great fishing or anything like that, but they've got ponds, creeks, rivers, lakes everywhere in this state. And in most areas, it's affordable, especially for the surrounding states. It's definitely more affordable than Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, and Maryland. On the west side of the state, though, you got West Virginia and Ohio, and those places are a lot cheaper than Pennsylvania. 10.7% of state switching retirees find themselves in Pennsylvania. Number 2, Florida. Yep, number 2 is Florida, and most of you are probably surprised it's not number 1. That is always the stereotypical place people move to when they retire. For many years, that was the number 1 retirement spot in the nation. 2 is not that bad, but they were always king of the hill. I just talked about Sarasota, Florida in a video about a week ago, and I'm surprised at the number of retirees that move to that area every single year. Florida has great coastal retirement areas, and if you go inland, it's pretty much the same stuff, minus the ocean, but a lot cheaper. Lakeland, Winter Haven, Brooksville, the Villages, which that place is just kind of weird, but very popular. 11.3% of state switching retirees find themselves in Florida. All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget we have another channel called On This Day. There's a link down below. We'd love it if you went over there and subscribe, watch some videos, all that good stuff. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Tennessee. Surprise, surprise. Tennessee's drawn in more retirees than Florida. It's not really that much of a surprise, especially for someone like me who goes over all this stuff all the time. They've got a lot of different programs for retirees and senior citizens going on in Tennessee. It's actually considered one of the best states to live in if you are a senior citizen. Not saying all retirees are senior citizens, but you're pretty close. Tennessee's this weird state that I wouldn't say out of nowhere, but it's become popular with every demographic in recent years. And now the retirees are starting to clue in on what the millennials are doing. I knew a few people back in the mid-90s that were all, Tennessee's the greatest place to live. I'm heading back there as soon as I can. And what's funny is I honestly think every single one of the ones I knew, probably 5 or 6 of them, that went to Tennessee are still there as far as I know. Ones that moved to Nevada, Arizona, they eventually came back, and even some of the ones that came up here to Oregon went back to Southern California. But Tennessee, they all stayed. Tennessee is not a bad state. It has a lot going for it. Plenty of things to do outdoors. It's affordable, beautiful land. It's not Kentucky. Good health care. Nashville, not a bad place to live. 13.1% of state switching retirees find themselves in Tennessee. Do you want to retire in California? If you said yes, congratulations, you are stuck in the 1990s. That was the last decade California was considered a retirement hotspot. Oh, and if you are just waking up from that 1990s coma, Nirvana did break up, sort of, Seinfeld's finale flopped, and George Michaels wasn't singing about girls. Such a good singer. Today we look at where people want to retire in California, and I will tell you up front, these places are expensive, and in most cases, they're ridiculously expensive. Like 90% of us can't afford these towns. We gotta treat this video like an episode of Lifestyle and the Rich and Famous. We did a survey last year where we asked people where they would retire if they could in California. There were several other publications that had similar surveys, and for the most part, they had the same cities. 2 of them on my survey didn't show up in any other list, and I think that has to do with cost. Those 2 are the most affordable on this list. All right, we're gonna take a look at California's most desired retirement hotspots. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Sebastopol, California. The town of Sebastopol was founded in 1854, naming itself after the port city in Russia. It is about an hour north of the San Francisco Bay Area and almost 30 minutes inland from the Pacific Ocean at Bodega Bay. Sebastopol is just far enough away from San Francisco and all its problems, but not so far that it's a major hassle to get to the city if you need to, I don't know, catch a flight or go down to the Tenderloin and see some good old-fashioned sidewalk campsites. This town has great stats across the board till you get to cost of living in real estate. They're extremely high, both of them. Crime and traffic aren't a big problem here, which is part of the reason retirees love this place. It's kind of known as a quirky community, almost like that arts type thing, you get in a lot of places up in the Bay Area. They like their organic farming and they like to be close to the vineyards. They have a population of 8,000. Now, the median home price here, they say, is $720,000. That's not realistic. We've learned before that that's just a number real estate agents and banks use to come up with value on something. I don't know. The typical home price here is about $1.2 million. They do have some that are under $1 million, like $900,000 and $850,000. They're a little run down and probably need some work. But the typical home is about $1.2 million and it goes way up. There's one in town right now that I'd live in a heartbeat that's going for $2.7 million. 40.4% of Sebastopol's population is over the age of 60. Number 9, La Jolla, California. Yep, heading on south to the San Diego metro area, we find La Jolla. La Jolla to San Diego is like one of those places, every city's got one, where all the rich people live. They have some beautiful houses up there. My sister used to live there. I used to drive all the way from Los Angeles metro area, like 2 hours and something, down to the La Jolla Comedy Store, do 20 minutes worth of comedy, get back in my car and drive back. Did this all the time. If I was smart, I'd go to the beach first, go down there way early, and then, I don't know, go to Boomer Beach and body surf for a couple hours, or just go sit at the La Jolla Cove. Good time there. And that's one of the reasons retirees like La Jolla so much. It's a beautiful town. It's very safe. It's got the ocean right there. They've got golf in the area. Well, they got quite a few golf courses in the area. You got the La Jolla Country Club right there in town. You got Torrey Pines right up the road. If you're a veteran, you got Miramar Memorial Golf Course. You also got Admiral Baker Golf Course, Chula Vista, Bonita, and of course, Coronado Municipal Golf Course. And those are the reasons why so many golf-loving retirees moved to the La Jolla area. The downside is, it is expensive. The population of La Jolla is about 47,000 residents. The typical home here goes for about 1.6 million. They've got condos here, like 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom condos that are right on the ocean, like the sand is right outside your building. They go for $3.5 million. The most expensive one they have right now in La Jolla is going for $38 million. La Jolla is a typical upscale community, beautiful beaches and cultural attractions as they put it. A lot of very expensive boutique type businesses downtown. 29.4% of La Jolla's population is over the age of 60. Number 8, Redlands, California. Redlands is the first city on this list that I said didn't show up on other ones. That's because it's sort of inexpensive compared to the other ones on this list. Compared to some place in Missouri, Arkansas, or Mississippi, it's astronomically expensive. But compared to the rest of California retirement places, it's doing pretty good. Probably the biggest reason Redlands is so affordable compared to everywhere else in California, it's right next to San Bernardino. And if you don't know, San Bernardino sucks. The whole area surrounding Redlands kind of blows. I mean, you got Riverside, which has gotten better in recent years. It's not really there yet, but it's gotten a little bit better. That's to the west of Redlands. And then you got Beaumont, Banning to the south, along with Moreno Valley, which blows. Yeah, this whole place is horrible. Redlands is okay. This place was all citrus farms back in the day. I mean, it's got a lot of great historic architecture. Citrus groves are still there somewhat, and they have a lot of cultural events out in this area. It's almost the desert, so it's kind of what they do. There's about 73,000 people living in Redlands right now, and the typical home here goes for a little over 600,000, 603,000 to be exact. Give you an idea how much nicer it is in Redlands compared to San Bernardino. The violent crime in San Bernardino is 261% above the national average. And if it sounds like I'm having a hard time with San Bernardino, where I grew up by the beach, a lot of us kind of dropped the AR that's in the middle. It was just San Bernardino. It's not what we were saying, it's just what it sounded like we were saying. So since I spent my whole life calling it that, I'm tripping over my words a little bit. Anyway, so they're 261% above the national average when it comes to violent crime. Redlands is 15% lower than the national average. Bravo, Redlands. Their cost of living is high, not as bad as some of the other ones on this list, but it's up there. 25.5% of Redlands' population is over the age of 60. Number 7, Sonoma, California. Back up north, we go to Sonoma. Sonoma is our second trip into the wine country of California, but it's not our last. Sonoma is another city that's about an hour north of San Francisco, making it far enough away where you don't have to worry about all the problems of San Francisco, but close enough to where it's not a major hassle if you need to catch a flight. You also got Sacramento to the east of Sonoma, so that's almost a little bit better sometimes if you need to catch a flight. You're not running into all that crazy traffic. There's some traffic around Sacramento. I'm not saying there isn't, but in the Bay Area, it gets brutal. It always bumps around somewhere between the first and fifth worst traffic in the nation. I've never actually driven in Boston in, 20 years. I've taken Ubers and stuff. I've never really noticed the traffic's bad, but oh my God, people have just been complaining about it so much lately. All of Sonoma's crime stats show that it's a very safe place. They're all like 50% below the national average. We're talking total crime, violent crime, property crime. Sonoma is known for being in wine country, a historic plaza, and outdoor recreation. Now, the thing about retiring in this part of California compared to, let's say, Southern California, you're not going to have nearly as many golf courses. Sonoma has the Sonoma Golf Club, not too far away, but they don't have a whole bunch of golf courses like in Southern California, or even Monterey. Monterey has quite a few. But if you could substitute your golf addiction with wine tasting, you're in the clear here. The city of Sonoma has a population of about 11,000 residents, and the typical home here goes for about $986,000. Again, and this will be the last time I mention it, the prices go up from there, way up. So we can all assume the word typical kind of means right in the middle someplace. 33.7% of Sonoma's residents are over the age of 60. Number 6, Paso Robles. Paso Robles is what they call it. It's officially called El Paso de Robles. Paso Robles is north of San Luis Obispo and about 45 minutes inland from the Pacific Ocean at Cambria. I've heard some people still refer to Paso Robles as Southern California. It's not. Everything north of Santa Barbara is considered Central California. At least that's what the official map says. I know other people still consider it, Santa Maria, Los Alamos, Lompoc, that's part of Southern California. But actually, it's all Central California up there. But back in the 90s, if you were getting out of LA, you just couldn't afford it anymore, and you still had a little bit of money, you moved to Paso Robles. If you didn't have much money, you moved out to Moreno Valley and Hemet, and worried about your tires going missing in the middle of the night. I like Paso Robles. I used to drive through there occasionally. I was stationed in Monterey at Fort Ord there, and I'd drive home to Los Angeles like every weekend I could. And we'd always stop there and get something to eat. And it seemed like a nice place. Never spent a whole bunch of time there. We'd come down the 101 and make that left onto the 46, go by where James Dean died. It was a good trip. But Paso Robles is still a really nice place to live and definitely a good place to retire. It's not as expensive as a lot of the other places on this list, but it's definitely not as one of the cheaper ones. You got a few golf courses in the area. Great place if you're into gardening, and if you love wine, even better. If you look and you see that they have a river flowing through town, I've seen that river. It's really a dry riverbed. I'm sure when the weather turns, they do get some water going through it, but don't expect any fishing in town. It's called the Salinas River, but in my experience, probably the 50 times I've crossed that river in my life, coming back and forth, probably more than that, but let's say 50 times, I haven't seen much more than a small creek worth of water flowing through that thing. It's California, they don't have any water. What they do have is about 33,000 people, and the typical home here goes for about $713,000. 30.3% of the population is over the age of 60, and they have some hot springs in the area. So wine and hot springs, what could go wrong? Number 5, Ojai, California. I love Ojai. Ojai is inland from the Pacific Ocean, about, 20-minute drive maybe, between Santa Barbara and Oxnard. This one is considered to be in Southern California. Ojai is a tourist destination known for its boutique hotels, recreational opportunities, things like farming, hiking, organic agriculture, things like that. It's really a nice little artsy type town. Beautiful architecture, and you won't find any chain stores or things like that in town. They have a city ordinance prohibiting this. This encourages local small businesses to develop and, keep the town unique. You could see the Spanish influence in this town. I mean, the architecture just looks like that old 1760s Spanish colonization period of California. I became aware of Ojai watching The $6 Million Man. Remember Jamie Summers, the Bionic Woman? Yeah, she was from Ojai, California. If you're ever in the area, Ojai is a great place to check out. I mean, even if you don't plan on retiring there, definitely stop by and take a look. Don't worry about crowds, there's not a lot of people living here. During the summer months and on the weekends, it can get a little crowded, but for the most part, it only has 7,800 residents, so it's not a terrible place to be. The typical home here goes for about $1.09 million, and 41.8% of the population is over the age of 60. Number 4, Napa, California. Napa is back up north again, not too far from Sonoma. Napa sits north of San Pablo Bay, which is part of the San Francisco Bay, and it is just east of Sonoma. I have an old army buddy who's in Napa all the time. He lives in a pretty unique town. It's called American Canyon, which is just south of Napa. Everything on this guy's Facebook and his Instagram is him at a golf course with a drink in his hand, or at a winery with his wife and all her friends. We're starting to think he's got a problem. It's been many years since I've been to Napa, but I know a lot of people have been retiring there for decades. It was a hot spot back in the 70s and probably the 80s, kind of cooled off around the 90s and then picked up again in the 2000s. Looking at the numbers now, it doesn't look like they slowed down much. In the 1970 census, they gained 62% of their population. And then in the 80s, they gained 40%. And then in the 1990 census, they only gained 21%. And then in 2000, 17%. And I guess it's slowed down because 6% in 2010 and only 3% in 2020. It's probably got a little too expensive for people to retire there. So it's definitely not a place you want to think about retiring unless you got some serious coin. The cost of living is almost 60% above the national average. They don't have much crime, so that's good. If you want to move there and drink a whole bunch of wine, you might have some competition. This town has 80,000 residents. The typical home goes for just under $900,000, $894,000 to be exact, and about 28.7% of their population is over the age of 60. Number 3, San Luis Obispo. San Luis Obispo is a lot like Ojai and Paso Robles. In my opinion, I think it's a little bit nicer than Paso Robles. It's not as cool as Ojai though. This is where you will find the Madonna Inn. This is a 3-star hotel that is known for being, over the top and ridiculously decorated. It honestly looks like the 1970s Las Vegas threw up in each individual room, but it is very popular. It's one of those things you just gotta kind of do once. It's almost one of those places where you'd want to go in and go, I'd like to speak to the interior decorator administrator for this building. They look at you and go, well, he's been institutionalized since the 1970s. You're all, well, that makes sense. San Luis Obispo is a great town, been there many times, and it is expensive. Oddly enough, it does have a little bit of crime here. It's 12% above the national average for their violent crime. That's not terrible. Like I've said in many videos before, you got places like Detroit and Chicago where there's areas that are like 450% above the national average. I'm working on a video right now about the most dangerous small towns in the United States. There is one where their violent crime rate is like 1,100% above the national average. The mail stopped delivering to this town. And no, it's not in California. It's actually in Indiana. But San Luis Obispo is a great place. Like a lot of the other towns in this area, they got that great Spanish architecture, and they got a population of about 47,000 residents. And people still love to retire here. It's a college town. It's got a relaxed atmosphere. It's kind of close to the ocean. Wine, golf, gardening, and you're not in a big city. The typical home here goes for $1.03 million, and 27.4% of the population is over the age of 60. Number 2, Santa Barbara, California. Santa Barbara is the biggest city on this list, but for some reason it's still got that, like, I wouldn't say small town, but town feel, you know? It's not terribly large. It's a unique city. I like Santa Barbara, always have. Santa Barbara is one of the first cities you get to when you're going up the coast out of Los Angeles. I mean, Ventura and Oxnard are kind of still part of the Los Angeles metro area. Well, Santa Barbara is the first one that's really not part of it. It sits just north of the Channel Islands, and it's got some good places to surf. Find better places down in Ventura, but Santa Barbara's no slouch. We used to drive up and surf Rincon, but during the winter, sand spit. Definitely not a place in the winter for first timers. Just like every place else in this part of California, if you like wine, if you like sunshine, you like gardening, you like to walk on the beach, Santa Barbara is a great place for all that. Typical Mediterranean climate, beautiful beaches, cultural scene's really good here. They got 92,000 people. The typical home goes for $1.6 million, and 26.7% of their population is over the age of 60. All right, before we get to number 1, if you're thinking about moving to California or any place, there's a link for Home and Money in the description area below. They can get you in touch with a local real estate agent in just about any place in the United States. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Palm Springs, California. I used to go to Palm Springs all the time. Southern California, this is where you went during spring break during the 1970s, 80s, and I think the late 80s is when it kind of went to hell. Sonny Bono became the mayor and put the kibosh on all the good times. If you can imagine a whole town being so crowded it looks like a really popular concert, like up, the pit area, shoulder to shoulder people, that's how Palm Springs was when we used to go there. It was a great place. Now, they've got a lot of neighborhoods where none of that was going on, and that's where all the retirees lived. They got plenty of golf. It is a very hot place to live, so the summer's brutal. The winter might get down to a brisk 74 degrees. And before you do, yes, I do know there are some times it can get a little colder than that, but for the most part, it's about 72 degrees. Now, this is the one that kind of blew me away, because I said, where would you want to retire in California if you had to retire? Everyone kept saying Palm Springs. Palm Springs is a nice place. It's definitely not one of the best ones on here. It is affordable, again, compared to places in California. Palm Springs has a population of 48,000 residents. During the summer months, that gets up a little higher. The typical home here goes for $647,000. For California, in a decent town, that's a good price. 47.8% of their population is over the age of 60. Not bad for a town that kind of resembles a resort. They got so many golf courses here. Today we're looking at what are the most popular retirement spots outside the US for 2023. Every couple of years we like to find out where all the silver hairs are migrating to. Being one myself, I'm always interested in this subject. Not all of us stay in the US for our golden years. Some of us decide to give another country a go. Retirees are finding new ways to do retirement. One of the biggest hurdles we face in retirement is our budget. More than half the people that can actually retire do it on a serious budget. This, of course, leads a lot of us to do some serious Google research. In that research, we start looking at things like how to save money in retirement, how to stretch your retirement dollar, Where's the best early bird specials? Do strip clubs have a senior discount? What the hell is a reverse mortgage? And eventually you find some websites that tell the wonderful stories about retiring abroad. And as you go deeper into that, you realize that there are some nice countries to retire to that are half the price of living in the US. And about that time, some man named Hank leans over his shoulder and yells, "Carol, we're moving to Belize." Today we're looking at the most popular countries for expat retirees in 2023. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Portugal. Portugal is, I think, an often overlooked European country, especially for retirees. Right off the bat, it's in Europe. It's connected to Spain. It's almost in the Mediterranean. It's got a long coastline with the Atlantic Ocean. So people just assume this is a very expensive European country. It really isn't. They have some amazing towns with colonial-style architecture all over this country. It has a really good healthcare system. Good percentage of the population speaks English. And a retired couple can live on about $2,000 a month in Portugal. You might be able to get away with it a little bit lower than that, but you're probably going to have to budget pretty good. Number 9, Ecuador. Ecuador shares a border with Colombia, Peru, and the Pacific Ocean. It's not really a border, but you know what I mean. Most of Ecuador lives on the west side of the country. The east side is the frickin' wilderness. Ecuador is one of the countries that's fortunate enough to have the Andes Mountains running through it, and it goes right down the middle of the country just about. The Andes are the world's largest mountain range, extending through 7 countries and topping out at 22,000 feet, almost 23,000. It's actually 22,834 feet. Ecuador has a really low cost of living and a solid healthcare system. Cool thing is, Ecuador wants you to move there. There's always some hoops you gotta jump through. You just don't fly down there and call it home. There's always some red tape, but Ecuador kind of, they make it pretty easy. You can retire in Ecuador on about $1,800 a month, give or take a little bit. Now, these are 2022 numbers, even though we're talking about 2023. So if you watch this video 6 months down the line, 3 years down the line, the numbers are gonna change a little bit. The way the world's economy is going right now, it could change next week. Number 8, Colombia. Most Americans, including myself, remember the good old days of Pablo Escobar when it comes to Colombia. Colombia is nothing like that anymore. They do have some spots, but really, it is nothing like the glory days of the 1990s and 80s. Colombia is a pretty great place to retire, though. It has plenty of coastline on both the Caribbean and the Pacific Ocean. And like Ecuador, it's got the Andes Mountains right there also. They have a rainy season, but for the most part, most of Colombia, at least the populated areas, have decent weather. It's warm, it can get humid, but it's decent. Colombia has solid health care, an easy visa process, and a low cost of living. Obviously, it depends on where you move to and where you live, but you could survive there and live pretty good on about $2,000 a month. Number 7, France. This is another one like Portugal. Obviously, you're going to think it's expensive. It's France. Everyone knows of Venice. Everyone knows about Paris. And stop typing. Venice is in Italy. Be honest, who was leaving the comment? France has amazing cities and outstanding rural communities. Obviously, if you move to Paris or something like that, it's going to be very expensive. But the smaller towns in the rural areas are affordable. The thing that really puts France on this list over a lot of other countries is the healthcare. France has excellent healthcare. It's high quality healthcare that is still affordable. If you're living outside the cities, there's a lot of nice communities where you could live pretty comfortably on about $2,200 a month. Number 6, Guatemala. Guatemala almost gets on this list for cost of living alone. It is cheap to live in Guatemala. This one's no secret. It's not like Guatemala just sprung up and Americans are learning about it. It's been a popular spot for expats for quite some time. Don't be surprised if you find a whole bunch of people just like you. Find Hank and Carol, tell them you heard about them on a video. Guatemala has beautiful mountains, plenty of forest. They got a nice patch of Pacific coastline and a little sliver of beach in the Caribbean Sea. Yes, it stretches all the way across Central America, which really isn't hard to do, especially down that area. For some reason, people think Panama is the only one that has, two separate coastlines, the Caribbean and the Pacific. Costa Rica has it, Nicaragua, Honduras, Guatemala. The only two that don't have both bodies of water is El Salvador and Belize. I will be in Belize 8 days from now. You could live comfortably in Guatemala for about $1,500 a month. Obviously, I'm talking about American dollars. Don't come at me talking about loonies or anything like that. Number 5, Spain. Finishing off our European countries, we have Spain. Again, you probably thought it was too expensive, but really it's not. Downtown Barcelona, Madrid, places like that, it's going to be a little pricey. But if you get out into the small towns, in the rural areas, it is definitely affordable. Side note, I had a conversation with a young man who is going to study abroad. He's a freshman in college, and he asked about Spain, and then he said, I bet their Mexican food's really good. I said, I'm sure they got some good places that have Mexican food, and as the conversation evolved, I realized he kind of thought that that's what the national food of Spain is Mexican food. Sure, they're both speaking Spanish, but that's about it. And when I kind of explained to him that there's a pretty serious difference between these two countries, and I'm not just talking about where they are on a map, he was all, are you kidding? Really? I weep for our college students. But if you could afford it, it's not as cheap as some of the other places. If you could afford Spain, it is one of the best places to retire as an American on the planet. Good food, fine wine, the Mediterranean, great healthcare, and it is affordable. You could survive, not in the big cities, obviously, but you could live comfortably on $2,000 a month in some of the smaller towns. Number 4, Mexico. More and more people are moving to Mexico all the time. It's got some problems with cartels and there's some dangerous places, but for the most part, it's a nice country to live in. If your only experience is like Tijuana and Juarez, Ensenada maybe, yeah, it's not the best country if that's all you've seen. Sadly, that is what most Americans do see. It's almost like if someone came from another country and all they saw was Detroit and Camden, New Jersey. That's what it's like if you only see Juarez, Tijuana, and Ensenada. Mexico, though, is definitely a place to know before you go. Where should you live? Where should you visit? What should you avoid? Things like that. Some of the best things about Mexico is you're right there next to the US, so getting back and forth is pretty easy. They've got a low cost of living, beautiful beaches, the Caribbean and the Pacific side, and you can live comfortably on about $1,800 a month here. Number 3, Panama. Who doesn't want to live in Panama? I love Panama. One of my favorite countries. A lot of the old military bases, because the U.S. used to have a ton of military bases there, now not so much, but a lot of them, like PACCOM, are now communities where people have condos, and a lot of American retirees will live there. Panama is a beautiful country with amazing people. Panama's got everything from jungles to mountains to amazing coastlines. If you take a hike in the forest, A, be careful, but B, every little bend you go around, there's a new river, a waterfall, a creek, a stream. There's water everywhere here. Here in the United States, if there's any kind of water going over any kind of cliff, like a 7-foot tall waterfall will have a name. That's what we're kind of used to. When I was in Panama for the first time, we had these guides with us. I'm like, what's this waterfall called? And he's like, doesn't have a name. Okay. Later on, we saw a bigger one that was probably dropping about 2 stories. I'm like, was this waterfall got a name? He's like, no. Do you name waterfalls? I was like, yeah, we do. He's like, we have too many. Panama has okay healthcare, so, it's not the world's best, but it's decent and it is affordable. They have some great golf courses, amazing fishing, and you can live comfortably in Panama on about $1,400 a month. Number 2, Belize. Belize is a great little country sandwiched in between Mexico and Guatemala. It has miles of Caribbean coastline, and a good percentage of the people here speak English, so less of a chance of running into language barriers. Belize has a lot of mellow beach towns along the Caribbean coastline. Just pick one and hang out. This is another one of the countries I will be going to next week, and I'll have videos up about it a few weeks after I get back. Belize shows up at number 2 because almost everyone speaks English. They have decent health care, pretty stable government, and you could live comfortably as a couple here for about $1,800 a month. If you want to cut costs a little bit, you could definitely get by in about $1,200. On $3,000 a month, you could live like a king in Belize because their cost of living is pretty low. All right, before we get to number 1, don't forget we have another channel called On This Day. There's a link for that down below. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Costa Rica. This is a very popular one for Americans, and it has been for about 4 decades now. I have a cousin that goes down there and surfs least once a year, goes down, spends like 2 weeks just surfing in Costa Rica. It's a very welcoming country for Americans. It's another one that has the Caribbean Sea on the east side and the Pacific Ocean on the west side. And it's considered one of the safest countries in Latin America. They don't even have an army. Now, besides all that good stuff, their cost of living is very, very low. It's actually the lowest on this list. Cost of food, rent, and healthcare is much cheaper than any place else in Latin America or Europe or North America. They say you can get by on less than $1,000 a month. If you want to live big, $1,100. I read one guy's blog who lives in Costa Rica. He retired early, and he says he survives on about 8,000 American dollars a year. At that price, I'm sure a lot of top ramen is involved, or he's living off the land. What state are Generation Xers planning on retiring to? That's a survey we ran, and we simply asked that question. Generation X is getting closer to retirement. The age range for Gen X is 43 to 58 here in 2023. If you were born between 1965 and 1980, you are part of the MTV generation, and you're getting closer to collecting that retirement check. As we've learned in past videos, a good number of retirees flee their home state in retirement for a number of reasons. Cost of living, family, weather. You met an Eastern European woman online that you've been sending money to, and she's always wanted to live in Miami, and real estate prices. There are many reasons and many places Gen Xers are thinking about for retirement. We did a survey that received over 5,000 responses where we simply asked Generation X, if you retire in the United States, what state do you plan on doing it in? In this video, I'm going to give you the results of the survey and what places each of these states has the highest percentage of retirees. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 15, Delaware. Yep, we're doing 15 today because a lot of times when I just do 10, people always want to know what 11 and 12 were and stuff like that. So I figure on one like this, we'll just do 15 and call it good. Delaware is a small state that is very enticing with its low taxes, affordable cost of living, and excellent healthcare options. The state also has a wide range of cultural amenities, including museums, theaters, and art galleries. Delaware is a pretty cool state. I mean, they got Wilmington on the north end of the state. If you stay out of there, it's a great place to live. The only other knock they have is they have some pretty rough winters. I mean, it's the mid-Atlantic area, so yeah, it can get cold. This is a great place to live if you're a history buff. I mean, so much history went on in New Jersey, Pennsylvania right there, obviously Baltimore and Washington, D.C. You're not terribly far from New York City if you want to go there. It's not a bad place to live. The city that has the highest percentage of retirees is Milford, with 28.8% of their population being over the age of 60, which 60 doesn't necessarily mean you're retired, but it's just kind of giving you an idea. Delaware received 150 votes. Number 14, New Mexico. New Mexico is a state that's perfect for retirees seeking a unique cultural experience with its Native American history and a serious art scene, especially in Santa Fe. At least that's my experience. Other people might think they have better art other places in New Mexico. Santa Fe is amazing. I mean, not just the art, the architecture of the place. I love it. One of the biggest things drawing them in is the low cost of living. It's lower than many other states, and the healthcare in New Mexico is excellent. I've mentioned this before, but just in case this is your first time here and you're, let's say, 20, 25, 30, as you get older, you need good healthcare. All the damage you put your body through in your 20s, 30s, and 40s catches up with you in your mid-50s. Rio Rancho is where you'll find the most retirees, at least percentage of. That's 29.6% of their population is above the age of 60. New Mexico got 175 votes. Number 13, Nevada. Nevada, it's a solid place for retirement if you don't mind the heat. I mean, it doesn't have snow all the time. It does snow occasionally in the Las Vegas area, and that's where most of the retirees will move to, the Henderson, Las Vegas area. They almost never get snow, but in recent years, it's snowed there like twice. And we're not talking feet of snow or anything like that. So if in retirement you plan on not shoveling snow, your chances are pretty good in the Las Vegas metro area of never shoveling snow again. The state's cost of living is slightly above average, but it offers a range of affordable housing options and no state income tax, which is always good. The highest percentage of retirees you're going to find in Sun City, Summerlin. This is a 55-year and up community, so that's why they got a good percentage here. Some of the cities and communities on this list will be retirement communities. But yeah, they got 40.6%. Nevada got 177 votes. Number 12, Georgia. The Peach State comes in at number 12. I could see this. I'm a little surprised it wasn't later on in the list. I would have put it somewhere around number 7, but that's just me. Honest reality, I don't know how Delaware even got on here. I mean, maybe, but just doesn't seem like a place that's on anyone's retirement radar. But according to the survey, it is. Anyway, back to Georgia. Georgia is a state that offers a range of benefits for retirees, including a warm climate, beautiful scenery, and affordable cost of living. The state also has excellent healthcare options with numerous medical centers and hospitals. They're also really big if you're retired military. If you are retired Army, you probably already know this. They have some great bases there that you can get what you need. The place with the most 60 and above would be Peachtree City. 31.4% of that community is over the age of 60. Georgia got 181 votes. Number 11, Wyoming. You know, I'm a little surprised at this one. I thought we'd see Wyoming at least in the top 10, but here they are at number 11. Wyoming is a state that offers a range of benefits for retirees. The cowboy state has a relatively low cost of living compared to other states. Retirees can stretch out their retirement savings a little bit further in Wyoming, which is always good. Wyoming has a good healthcare system with several highly regarded hospitals and medical facilities located throughout the state. Now, there's a little asterisk that goes for this one. A lot of the people that live in Wyoming live away from the cities. Sometimes access to healthcare can be limited if that's the choice you made. Now, they've got plenty of clinics and stuff like that, but if you move to Wyoming and need to be at a hospital for some kind of ultrasound, I don't know, CAT scan, whatever, you may have a drive ahead of you. The city with the highest percentage of retirees is Jackson. 21.8% of their population is over the age of 60. Wyoming got 182 votes. Number 10, Idaho. Idaho's another state that's still off the radar for many retirees, but it offers a good range of benefits, including low taxes, low cost of living, excellent healthcare options, and of course, decently priced real estate. The Gem State also has plenty of things for you to do, especially if you like to get outdoors. Depending on where you do move in Idaho, you can get some weather during the winter, so beware of that. The city with the highest percentage of retirees is Coeur d'Alene, with 25.4% of their population being over 60. Idaho got 194 votes. Number 9, Utah. Utah offers a unique combination of natural beauty, outdoor recreation, and cultural amenities. The state's cost of living is slightly above the national average, but it has a range of affordable housing options, and the healthcare in Utah is excellent. For all you 20-year-olds that are watching this and going by my statistics, that's about 13% of you. Every one of the 15 states on this list is known for having excellent healthcare. That just shows you how important that does get as you get older. I wasn't lying when I said that. Little piece of advice for you guys. This is your fatherly wisdom for the day. Take care of your knees and your lower back. That seems to be where you feel it the most as you get older. But Utah does have excellent healthcare, and it normally shows up on lowest crime rates. Nothing's going to beat Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. They're always the top of the heap when it comes to the lowest crime rate. Utah is normally the best on the West Coast. The Utah city with the most retirees, or people over 60, would be St. George, with 21.9% of their population being 60 and above. Now, I brought this up before. That's a great place to retire, especially if you want to live in a nice calm place, but you still like to go to the casino. St. George isn't too far away from the Nevada border, and they got some casinos right there on the border. 216 people voted for Utah. Number 8, South Carolina. South Carolina is known for its warm climate, beautiful beaches, and friendly residents. And Charleston is home to one of my favorite realtors, or real estate agents. I don't know what they like to be called anymore. I don't know what anyone likes to be called anymore. I do know calling a barista sugar britches is not okay anymore. And cue the people that will leave comments that say it never was okay. I gotta apologize. I know some of you were typing that in and I just stole your thunder. But South Carolina is a very appealing place for retirees. They have a very low cost of living. Sure, inside some of the cities like Charleston and Bluffton and Hilton Head, it can get expensive, but for the most part, this is a very affordable state. Excellent healthcare. They've got an overabundance of medical centers and a bunch of hospitals. South Carolina is a good place to live if you're looking for decent weather. Sure, they do get hit by hurricanes and things like that, but no place is perfect. You can go out to San Diego and have to worry about wildfires and earthquakes. The place that has the highest percentage of retirees would be Hilton Head Island, and it's 44.4% of them are above the age of 60. Number 7, Virginia. Virginia is a state that combines a rich history and culture with a high quality of life and excellent health care. The state's cost of living is slightly above the national average, along with their housing. If you get up some of the areas of northern Virginia near Washington, D.C., it gets pretty expensive. But you look around the state and they do have a bunch of small towns and smaller cities that have affordable housing options. The place with the highest percentage of retirees would be Williamsburg with 32.9%. Virginia got 253 votes. Number 6, Tennessee. Staying in the South, we have the volunteer state of Tennessee. This is a state that has something for everyone. Lively cities, great small towns, natural beauty everywhere. They also got a low cost of living, excellent healthcare, and affordable housing. You have some places in Tennessee that have extremely low housing for decent houses too. Not some shack that the Clampetts came from. Side note, that was a Beverly Hillbillies reference, and I just realized Jethro, Max Baer Jr., is still alive. He's 85 years old. The place you're going to find the highest percentage of retirees would be Fairfield Glade. 58.3% of them are over the age of 60. Tennessee got 268 votes. Number 5, Colorado. Colorado is big for military retirees. You got Fort Carson there, the Air Force Academy, a few other installations. So a lot of retirees, when they get out, they normally stay near a duty station they used to like. And that's one reason I thought about Colorado when I left California. Colorado's a beautiful state with a lot of good things going on there. For retirees who love outdoors, this is great. Colorado's a dream destination. Maybe not so much during wildfire season. If you got some breathing issues, just keep that in mind. The state has a very high quality of life and excellent healthcare options. If you're looking for the highest percentage of retirees, you're going to look at Castle Pines. 37.7% of the residents there are over the age of 60. Colorado got 269 votes. Number 4, Texas. Texas has always been one of those states just on the outside of where most people retire to. You know, it's always like Hawaii, Arizona, Texas, and Florida. Things are changing. Someone actually beat them for the number 3 spot this year. Surprise, surprise. I just did a video, there's a link for it down below, about how Texas is starting to see a slowdown in the amount of people from other states moving to Texas. Which, like I said in that video, I'm sure a lot of the Texans will rejoice to hear that news. Texas is known for its low taxes and low cost living, making it an attractive option for retirees. The state also has a thriving economy, with plenty of jobs to choose from if you decide to work a little in retirement. The Lone Star State is just a great state for everything. I mean, if you want concerts, great. If you want sporting events, amazing. If you like museums, perfect. Want to get run off the road for driving a Tesla? Exciting. If you want to know where the highest percentage of retirees are in Texas, Sun City. 35.3% of their population is over the age of 60. 274 people voted for Texas. Number 3, North Carolina. The Tar Heel State is an increasingly popular destination for retirees. It's got a mild climate, beautiful scenery, low cost of living. Now, one thing North Carolina has over most states, I mean, they all have great healthcare. North Carolina is normally in the top 5 whenever you're talking about best healthcare, especially the Raleigh-Durham Chapel Hill area. It's amazing healthcare up there. So it's no wonder that where you're going to find the highest percentage of retirees, it's going to be Chapel Hill. 20.2% are over the age of 60. 278 people voted for North Carolina. Number 2, Arizona. Arizona's got a dry heat going on that attracts a whole lot of retirees. I mean, if you're a person that likes hot weather, why not? I'm definitely not a hot weather type of person, but absolutely not a heat and humidity type person. The amount of sweat that comes out of me when I'm in like Mississippi or Florida weather is ridiculous. I start sweating like my wife just asked me how much I've spent on drones. But with Arizona's dry climate and stunning desert landscapes, it's a popular choice for retirees, especially if you are an active senior. The cost of living in Arizona is well below the national average, and the state has a wide range of affordable housing options. Plenty of affordable condos and even homes. Or trailers, if you're into trailer parks and stuff like that. Arizona has a lot of them, and a lot of them are really nice. But before you do that, if you ever are thinking about buying a trailer in a trailer park, make sure you watch the John Oliver special. He has that show Last Week Tonight. Well, he did one whole episode on the trailer park and mobile home industry. Didn't paint a very good picture. The city with the highest percentage of retirees would be Sun City with 73.8%. 311 people voted for Arizona. All right, before we get to number 1, if you're thinking about moving to another state, there's a link for a website called Home and Money down below. It's a great website for people that are looking to relocate, and you might need to get a hold of a realtor in that area. It'll help you with that. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Florida. That's right, Gen Xers, just like the baby boomers, the silent generation, the greatest generation, and the lost generation. They have all chosen to retire in Florida, and we're going to keep that trend rolling, it looks like, at least for another generation. We'll see if that gets switched up for the millennials. But Florida is the longtime favorite for retirees, thanks to its warm weather, sandy beaches, and no state income tax. The state's cost of living is slightly above the national average, but the healthcare is excellent, and they got plenty of things to do. And a lot of other retirees to hang out with, especially in the villages. If you want to be around a bunch of other retirees when you finally retire, you might want to move to the villages. 52.5% of the population is over the age of 60. Florida received 387 votes. Are you going to retire someday? Where are you going to do it? If you're thinking about retiring in the United States, today we're looking at 10 of the best cities to do that in 2024. I'm starting to change where I want to retire. I hear people are retiring on cruise ships now. They sell their home and just move on to a cruise ship. It's cheaper than a retirement home. But on this video, we're not going over the cheapest cities, and these aren't the safest cities, but these are overall some of the best places to retire in 2024. If you want to see more of these videos, because I could probably do 4 of these videos, leave me a message in the comment section. Maybe we'll do more. So what gets cities on this list? We're looking at the cost of living, healthcare, weather, and most importantly, the percentage of the population that is over 65. The average for the nation right now is 16.1% of the population. Now, a couple on this list are a touch above the national average on cost of living, and a couple don't have the best weather, but they're killing it in other categories, so they're on the list. Now, let me explain how the cost of living index works. If the cost of living index is 80 in a place, that means if you were at a place that was the national average and you bought, let's say, $100 worth of groceries, those same groceries in this place would be $80. It's a much more complicated subject than what I just said, but that gives you the idea. Get it? Got it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Santa Fe, New Mexico. I love Santa Fe, New Mexico. I've never stayed there in any extended period of time, maybe a few days here or there, like 5 times in my life. It is a beautiful city. On looks alone, I love this place. The architecture of just the average home is amazing. It's that old Spanish adobe type thing. I'm sure they have their own term for it, but that's what I call it. What's cool about those homes is even when they're run down, it sort of looks like it's part of the aesthetic that it's supposed to look run down. Then you see a house that's got like 5 broken down cars on the lawn, and you know that one's not doing it on purpose. It is run down. But Santa Fe, New Mexico is a city that is rich in history and culture. It's got a mild climate and a variety of outdoor activities. That's like their strong point, outdoor activities. If you want to buy a house here, a decent home's in between $400,000 and $500,000. Anything below that's going to take a little work. And yes, the prices go all the way up into the millions. That's pretty much every city outside of Mississippi and Arkansas. Anyway, the cost of living index in Santa Fe, New Mexico is 93.6. The weather is considered mild and warm, and their health care is graded good. There's 4 different things: poor, average, good, excellent. The percentage of the population that is over 65 in Santa Fe, New Mexico is 18.6%. Number 9, Fort Collins, Colorado. Fort Collins is a great place to live. It's been years since I've lived there. I've been back a handful of times, but I really like Colorado Springs back in the 90s, and it's still a pretty good place to live. Now, one thing I will mention about this isn't a political video, but if you're a Republican and you really lean red and that's important to you, Colorado Springs is your type of place. Denver, not so much. It's also a great place to retire if you are ex-military because you got Fort Carson right there. And now they've got, I guess it's Peterson Space Force Base is there also. I don't think that's very big though. If you want to buy a home here, a decent home's going to start around $375 to $475. They go up and they do go down too, but anything below that $375, again, it's going to take a little work. All right, here's the numbers. The cost of living index in Colorado Springs is 95.5. Weather is mild and has all 4 seasons, but it is Colorado, so you will get some snow. Their healthcare is rated excellent, and 19.1% of their population is over the age of 65. Number 8, Boise, Idaho. Boise, Idaho is a mountain city with mild climate and a variety of outdoor activities and a relatively low cost of living. People always say that Boise is a mountain town. I never got that feeling. I always thought it was like a city in a valley, you know? They got mountains to the north and to the east, but I don't know. It's weird. Boise is a great place to live, and not just if you're Californian trying to escape California. All kinds of people are moving to Boise. And I have confirmation of someone from Boise moving to California. It's rare, but it happens. A high school friend retired from a police department down in Southern California. The people that bought his house were from Napa, and he's moving to Sandpoint, I believe, or Coeur d'Alene, one or the other. You want to buy a decent home in Boise? They start off around $325,000, somewhere around there. Go up to about $425,000. That'll get you a decent home. All right, here's the stats. The cost of living index in Boise, Idaho is 88.5. The weather is considered mild with all 4 seasons. They do get some cold winters, and their summers can get a little hot. Their healthcare is graded good, and the percentage of the population that is over 65 is 18.3%. Number 7, Cape Coral, Florida. Now, in full disclosure, I really could have done a whole video on just Florida alone. A lot of people move to Florida. There's a lot of 65 and older in Florida and a lot of the different cities. But not everyone's into Florida. And I think we've done a video before on the best places in Florida to retire. Cape Coral, Florida is one of them. Cape Coral, Florida is a city on the Gulf Coast with a really warm climate, beautiful beaches, and a variety of retirement communities. And no, we won't be talking about the Villages. By the way, if you want a good laugh, Google the Villages and loofahs. I guess the old folks at the Villages are kind of dirty. And I'm not talking like they're not taking enough showers. These people are putting different colored loofahs on their car so you know what they're into. And they've got a whole chart. Yes, elderly swingers, people. If that's not a sign of the apocalypse, nothing is. But if you're looking for Cape Corals on a map, it is south of Tampa and St. Petersburg near Fort Myers. And it's a nice town. It's beautiful. What's really cool about this place, you can get a decent home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, for under $300,000. Probably built in the 1980s or 1990s. If you want a really nice one, those start off around $450,000. All right, here's the stats. The cost of living index in Cape Coral, Florida is 99.2, so it's almost at the national average. Their weather is considered warm and sunny. Their healthcare is considered good, and the percentage of the population that is 65 or older is 18.8%. Number 6, Ashburn, Virginia. I'm sure a lot of you would have overlooked this one and probably still will. There's a couple things that get them on this list. One, if you're retired military, that's great because they have all kinds of military facilities in the area. Ashburn isn't a city as much as it's considered a census designated place. There's a few other things that make this place very appealing. One, it's outside of DC, far enough away not to be a problem. They have plenty of golf and plenty of outside activities. Now, this is one of the ones on the list that's a little expensive. Homes here start around $600,000, but you can buy condos for $400,000 on up. A lot of people like a condo. This is a great place for that. This is a fairly wealthy neighborhood. Here's the stats. The cost of living index in Ashburn, Virginia is 113.3. The weather is considered warm and sunny. Yes, it's the East Coast up there, Virginia. They will get some harsh winters, but most of the time it's warm and sunny. Their healthcare is excellent. This is probably the best healthcare on this list. And the percentage of the population that is 65 and older is 18.9%. Number 5, Madison, Wisconsin. Madison, Wisconsin is definitely a place for retirees that don't mind cold winters. Because it's Wisconsin, it gets pretty cold. Madison is the capital of Wisconsin, and it is a beautiful city with good people. It's also a college town, but it's a nice family town. They have a very friendly atmosphere. They have a low cost of living. And again, a lot of outdoor activities. They have 2 lakes on each side of the city. It's also great if you like craft beer. They got a good microbrew scene in Madison, Wisconsin. If you want to buy a house here, about $320,000 will get you into something a little bit older, but decent and livable. And then it goes up from there. All right, let's do the numbers. The cost of living index in Madison, Wisconsin is 92.1. The weather is mild with all 4 seasons. They do get some pretty cold winters, so it's Wisconsin. Gotta be expected. But you will get all 4 seasons here, and the summers in Wisconsin and Minnesota, for that matter, are wonderful. The healthcare in Wisconsin is graded excellent, and 18.5% of the population is 65 or older. So it's not your typical place to move for retirement because it's kind of cold. Number 4, San Antonio, Texas. San Antonio is a great historic city. It's got the Alamo right there. It's got things to see like the River Walk. I was there, 2 years ago? Maybe less, 18 months ago. I loved it, even though they had drained the river that weekend I was there. That sucked. Beautiful city, great people, plenty of things to do. It's also home to a number of military bases, which can bring in the military retirees. It's actually known as Military City, USA. I did a video and I did a survey on the best places for military retirement. This wasn't on the list, and I can tell you San Antonio is the best one. I had to go off what people said in the survey. My opinion didn't really matter. And the survey went out to veterans. So yeah, it's kind of weird. If you want a decent livable home in San Antonio, you're looking at about $230,000. So they get on this list for price alone. You can go below $200,000, but it's probably not in the best neighborhood and you're gonna have to do some work to it. But if you want something nice in a decent neighborhood, you could get it for under $300,000. All right, let's take a look at the numbers. The cost of living index in San Antonio, Texas is 92.8. Their weather is warm and sunny. It's a very nice place. I was there in October in t-shirt and shorts. Wasn't bad. Their healthcare is rated excellent, even more so if you're in the military, and 18.1% of the population is 65 years old or above. Number 3, Tucson, Arizona. Tucson, Arizona is a desert city south of Phoenix. I said that one time Tucson was south of Phoenix, and it's south and sort of east a little bit. Some guy lost it. He goes, it's not south, it's southeast. It's actually 4 degrees to the east. I was like, 4 degrees? Really, dude? Come on. His response was, you're not very professional. I'm like, if you showed up at this channel looking for professionalism, you've come to the wrong place. If you want to buy a home in Tucson, you're looking anywhere around $250 to $350, depending on the neighborhood. That will get you something nice. Above $350, you'll probably get something really nice. I should mention this. What do I consider nice? I consider a nice home is a home that you're probably not going to have to redo the wiring and the plumbing. The roof looks decent. The house looks well maintained, and it was built after the 1950s. Now, I'm not saying there's not great homes that were built before the 1950s. That's kind of, over 70 years on a home, that's a little long. There's very few that make it that long and are still in decent shape. All right, to the numbers. The cost of living index in Tucson is 85.1. That is pretty solid. Their weather is warm and sunny. It's beautiful weather in Tucson. It gets really hot in the summers, but most of the year it's pretty decent. Their healthcare is excellent, and their population over the age of 65 is 17.6%. Number 2, Greenville, South Carolina. Greenville's showing up on my list a lot lately. They've just happened to slip into a lot of different categories, and they've been the answer on a few surveys. I honestly think in the next few years, Greenville's going to see a little bit of a boom in population. A lot of people are seeing it as a quality city. Right now, it is a growing city with a lot of things to offer retirees, including a low-cost living, mild climate, and a variety of cultural attractions. Greenville is south of Asheville, North Carolina. It's not too far from the North Carolina border. If you want to buy a home in Greenville, South Carolina, you're probably looking at $300,000 as starting to get you something decent. They do have a few nice older homes that are around $260,000, but a safe number is $300,000 on up. That's $300,000. All right, let's look at the numbers. The cost of living index in Greenville, South Carolina is 95.1. Their weather is considered mild, and you get all 4 seasons. They have good health care, and 18.2% of their population is 65 or older. All right, before we get to number 1, we finally launched our cruise channel. It's The Sweet Life for Briggs. There's a link down below. It's all about cruising and staying in hotel suites and things like that. The first video up right now is a good explainer about the video and what we're doing. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Sarasota, Florida. Sarasota, Florida is always been a great place to retire. It's been very popular over the years, and it's just getting more popular. Problem with that, it's a little more expensive than most of the cities on this list, but it might be worth it if you're looking to retire, especially if you want to retire in a warm climate. Sarasota has beautiful beaches, mild climate, active lifestyle for seniors. If you're looking for Sarasota on a map, it is south of St. Petersburg and Tampa, and north of Fort Myers and Cape Coral from earlier. If you want to buy a home here, so it's kind of weird. You can find decent homes in not the best neighborhood for about $275,000. But you can also find crappy homes in better neighborhoods for the same price. They're just all over the map in this city. But in my opinion, if you want to get something decent, $385,000 to $425,000 would be a good number. The newer ones are going to be right around $450,000 to $500,000, and they're usually decent, and they'll probably have a pool. They have a whole bunch of homes that I was looking at in Sarasota that are going for way too much. You look at the house, and it's like $375,000. You know, I wouldn't pay $200,000 for that. And then you look, and it's been on the market for like 3 years. So they just put it up there to see if someone's willing to pay it. All right, here's the stats. The cost of living index in Sarasota is 103.7. The weather is warm and sunny, just like every place in Florida. Sure, the occasional hurricane comes in and takes your roof, but it's a pretty good place to live. Their healthcare is considered excellent, and 18.8% of their population is 65 or older. What is going on, everyone? It is late September, we are moving towards winter, and it's getting colder. And if you're like me and you've broken a couple bones in your life, more than a couple in my case, winter means those breaks start to hurt, especially in the morning. Currently, I get up in the morning and walk around my room for 5 minutes and I look like I've been drinking all night. It happens even more, and it gets worse with age. That is one of the reasons you have snowbirds. In case you don't know what a snowbird is, it's a name they give retirees and senior citizens that live in northern states like Minnesota or New York, and then they head south for the winter to like Florida, Arizona to avoid the colder weather of their northern home states. Some retirees snowbird full-time. There are other reasons retirees relocate when they do retire. Cost of living, crime, access to quality healthcare, and culture. Those are the 4 big ones. They also list family, but there's no way to really measure that, so we gotta take that one out. So what is the methodology? How do we figure this out? Well, we take the 4 things that we could actually rank, and I go to websites like the Council for Community and Economic Research and figure out how they rank the states. Then we go to the Agency of Healthcare Research and Quality, and we see how they rank the states. Then of course the FBI website, and then there's various websites like the AARP website and things like that, different retiree and senior citizen websites, and they kind of list what states and what cities have the best entertainment and things to do for seniors. And that's how we kind of rank. They all rank them, put them all together, and come up with a ranking. So now you know how we do it. And that being said, why don't you watch this when you get back from your early bird dinner? There's a save button for save for later button on YouTube. You could use that in case you don't know about it. But for the rest of you, here's my top 10 worst states for retirees and senior citizens. Number 10, South Carolina. The Palmetto State kicks off this list at number 10. Let's start with why you should retire here. They have decent weather until a hurricane shows up, and they have good down-to-earth people. Where it starts to suck is culture and entertainment. They're ranked 45th. After Myrtle Beach and Charleston, there isn't much to do here for seniors. And stop typing. I'm sure if you live in South Carolina, you can list some really cool lawn bowling sites and whatnot. We are comparing this to the rest of the states, and they're lacking in that department. Crime is middle of the road at 27th, and where it gets bad is health and wellness. South Carolina is ranked 50th. How do you rank 50th in healthcare? Did the state decide that they've made enough medical advancements in like 1970? You go to your doctor, you got an STD, he pulls out some leeches. Not good, South Carolina. Number 9, New Jersey. Number 9 brings us to New Jersey, the Garden State. The good news is they have a lot of things for retirees to do, and surprisingly, as a state, their crime isn't bad. I'm thinking someone forgot to count Camden. That's my guess. But if excessive spray tan and hair products were a crime, they'd be the absolute worst. The rest is bad news. They rank 43rd in cost of living, their weather is 27th, and healthcare is 26th. They do have another problem in New Jersey, Atlantic City, and senior citizens flooding the casinos. I've seen it. It's not good. I once saw a lady in a casino try and get her senior discount on a hand of blackjack. She also tried to order a prune daiquiri from the waitress. That was really weird. Anyway, some of the casinos actually cater to this demographic. You'll know which ones they are. They have 2 floors of handicap parking in the parking structure. Number 8, Minnesota. Of course, the land of 10,000 lakes is on this list. Minnesota has some of the coldest winters in the country. This state is like the inspiration for heading south for the winter. Birds clued into this over 60 million years ago, and sometime later, a lady named Ruth said,
"This Minnesota weather, I'm heading to Sarasota."
And the snowbird was born. Minnesota is ranked 47th in weather, 35th in cost of living. Utilities are a big part of the cost of living in Minnesota. I'm sure owning many layers of clothing has something to do with it too. At least you don't need sunblock. So you're saving on sunblock, well, at least as much as you would other states. It is estimated that between 20 and 30,000 residents flee Minnesota before winter arrives, just come back around April. Number 7, California. Yes, California, my birth state, made it on another bad list. Surprise, surprise. At least it's not the worst this time. Now, this is the part of the video where we get the same old tired comments about California. Liberals this, Democrat that, homeless, yada yada, whatever. Just so you don't miss anything, we will watch this puppy getting a haircut while some lady pulls his hair while you leave your comment. California's major issue for the retired crowd, as you can imagine, is cost of living. They're ranked 49th. It's expensive to live in California. When I was growing up, the eastern part of California was always cheaper. That's not really even cheaper anymore. Now, they do okay with healthcare and culture, but they take it in the pants when it comes to crime. They're in bad shape there. They're ranked 39th out of 50. California is a place most seniors and retirees are leaving on a permanent basis, not just for the winter. That's a trend that doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon either. Number 6, Oregon. And now for my current home state, the Beaver State, Oregon. You know, I still smile whenever someone calls it the Beaver State. I guess I'm never going to grow up. I've given up on trying. Anyway, Oregon is not the place for retirees. It never has been. It's the rain for the most part. It rains here a lot. Most people that retire like to get out and do things. You've worked most of your life, probably in an office or factory. You should. Oregon, most of the year, isn't the place to do that. The summers here are amazing, don't get me wrong. People come out, they're always happy, they're nice to each other, they have events, fairs, festivals, and then it starts raining in late September, and we all start drinking beer till April. Oregon ranks 38th when it comes to weather. After weather, you have our health and wellness. It's not the best. We have a lot of depression here in Oregon. Oregon is actually ranked 45th in health and wellness. That's not a good number. 45th worst. That's 5 from the bottom. And this is where someone always has to comment, "You forgot the homeless problem because the Democrats and the liberals are running." Yep, whatever. Tell you what, I know you gotta leave your comment. We'll watch this skeleton doing some karate while you do that. Number 5, Washington. Oregon's neighbor to the north comes in 5th, the evergreen state, Washington. Washington is very similar to Oregon as far as weather and a lot of other things. But Washington kind of sucks across the board. They have nothing that's really good for retirees on this list, at least. Nothing is the worst, but nothing's good. The cost of living is 41st, crime is 37th, culture is 25, weather is 36th, and the health and wellness is 37th. So it sort of just blows for retirees here. I mean, New Jersey had low crime, California had great weather, South Carolina has decent weather, Washington's got none of those things. Not a good place for retirees. Number 4, Alaska. At number 4, we have the last frontier, Alaska. I was just in Alaska, and I can tell you statistically, retirees shouldn't be living here, but they are. That's like 75% of the people I saw in my week that I stayed in Alaska. It was like retiree age people, retirees, senior citizens, that type of thing. Alaska ranks 49th in crime, and they have the worst weather in the country. They are ranked 50th. Dead last, Alaska. The cost of living here is surprisingly high. I mean, you're in a place that most people don't find desirable, but the cost of living is that of a place that everyone wants to move to. So it's just weird. But what it is most everything in Alaska but fish and Christmas trees are shipped here. So there's added cost to that. I went to the grocery store while I was in the Kenai Peninsula, and while I was there, when I came out, I got $90 worth of stuff, and I figure I could have got the same in Oregon for about 60. There's quite a difference there, especially if you're living there full time. Number 3, Illinois. Coming in at number 3 is the land of Lincoln, Illinois. Right off the bat, the dog whistles went off, and people want to leave comments about Chicago being this crime-infested city where ice cream men are pulled out of their trucks and given Indian burns and Charlie horses, or whatever the local gangs are doing these days. Chicago isn't that bad. As proof, it doesn't bring down the whole state with its crime stats. Actually, for retirees, they're ranked 26, sort of middle of the road there. In comparison, Arkansas is ranked 46 in crime because of 2 medium cities, for the most part. That's it, just 2 medium cities are bringing that whole state down. Now, I'm not saying the rural part of Arkansas is without crime. It's got crime, but these 2 cities really bring down the whole state. But Illinois still sucks for other reasons. Cost of living, they're ranked 40th, and as far as healthcare and wellness, they're second from the bottom at 49th. Their weather, it isn't the worst either, but it isn't the best by any stretch of the imagination. It's actually 25th. Number 2, Maryland. Maryland comes in at the second to the worst place for the retirement crowd in the entire United States. That's right, the Old Line State is not the place you want to spend your golden years. That is one of their nicknames, the Old Line State. The Free State is another one of their nicknames they have, which I find ironic, seeing that the cost of living is so high. That nickname actually has nothing to do with cost, but yeah. They're ranked 47th in cost of living. Crime, weather, culture, and entertainment aren't the best either. The health and wellness for the retired crowd is also something that needs to be worked on. It's ranked 37th in the country. Maryland isn't a terrible place in the rural areas, but when you live out there, you lose a lot in entertainment and culture, type things to do. Sounds all great to live out in the sticks until you realize you've been counting down the days till the county fair for like 6 months, just so you have an opportunity to actually talk to someone else face to face. And number 1, New York. There's a reason people are flooding out of this state, and it isn't just cost of living. They're actually the worst in the country, coming in at number 50 for affordability, but that isn't the most common reason listed. Retirees and seniors can't get out of the state quick enough. New York actually leads the country in outward migration for people over 50. Brutal winters, especially upstate, crime, and healthcare are all reasons listed by people fleeing the Empire State. The only thing they do have is culture and entertainment. They have more than any other state on this list, and they're ranked 4th in the country. One thing I read with people over the age of 50, retirees and seniors, some of the more common reasons for them leaving New York were fear of another 9/11, the mortgage is too expensive in retirement, insurance prices, and the taxes on annuities and their digital asset management. Now, that one's very specific, but I believe that was from the Wall Street Journal, so I guess that makes sense to them. Not me, I'm an idiot. But yeah, New York is the number 1 worst state for retirees. It's not a place you want to live. If you're on a fixed income or you just want to enjoy the latter part of your life, it just doesn't make sense for most people. Alright, so that's my top 10 worst places to retire in the United States. Hope you guys got some information out of it. Hope it helps out someone. Do a little more research. Just don't take my word for it. Research some of these states and see if it works out for you if you're retiring. It's not something you want to, mess up. Make sure it works for you. Anyway, don't forget to hit that like button, leave me a comment, buy a t-shirt. I've got all those links below. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.